Our next plenary speaker is the Director of the Biodiversity Management Bureau, or BMB, of the DENR. And under her watch, the Bureau has improved conservation programs, including management and sustainable financing of protected areas and key biodiversity areas nationwide. Her expertise and work experience in championing wildlife protection and biodiversity conservation in the Philippines has made her a very able country representative in various international fora. She has been appointed to the advisory body of the United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity and now heads the subsidiary body on scientific and technological advice, an intergovernmental body that gives scientific advice to the CBD's Conference of Parties, or COP. Director Lin is a graduate, proudly a graduate of the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, holding a Doctor of Veterinary Medicine degree. And she is also one of the pioneers as a wildlife vet during her earlier days. So, ladies and gentlemen, to talk on the laws and regulations affecting collection for natural history repositories, let us all welcome Dr. Theresa Mundita S. Lim.
I'm very pleased to be here. It was a long drive, but actually it's supposed to be short because of the traffic situation. It's always a long drive now from Manila to Los Baños. And so I am happy that some arrangements were done to be able to accommodate the presentation even at this point in time. But I was also pleased to be here earlier because I was able to catch the earlier presentations, which is also very interesting to me. Okay, so I'm here to, of course, as part of the Biodiversity Management Bureau. We used to be called the Protected Areas and Wildlife Bureau. But we've expanded task now and under the rationalization plan, covering biodiversity, not just within protected areas, but also outside, even in urban areas. We have been renamed as Biodiversity Management Bureau. And we're basically a policy-making body and oversee the implementation of biodiversity policies nationwide. And so we've had good partnerships with the museums, but in the past it wasn't that way. So, but this is a very good time to discuss all of these policies. No? Alright, so I am here to talk about the laws and regulations affecting collection for natural history repositories. Next. Okay, so I don't have to talk about these natural history collections. Most of you would know more about this. But it is expected that these materials in the natural history collections will be open for use by researchers from around the world and has written permission from national authorities. Okay, next. The Convention on Biological Diversity, which was talked about earlier by Dr. Noy, is the main international global framework that we adopt in regulating and also for granting access and benefit sharing for genetic resources. So the convention has actually 3 objectives: conservation of biological diversity, sustainable use of its components, so it's not the convention realizes that aside from protection, we also need to utilize the resources, but we utilize them sustainably. And for us to be able to achieve the conservation and sustainable use, we need to have fair and equitable sharing of benefits of these resources as well. And this is particularly important for a country like the Philippines because we are a mega, I'm sure you've heard earlier that we are a mega biodiverse country. So a lot of these resources are only found in the Philippines and are attached to traditional knowledge systems as well. And so it's important that when we grant access, there is also benefit that goes to the people that are protecting the resource. Okay. So what is the main, so I mentioned the global framework, CBD. There is also the Convention on the International Trade of Endangered Species of Flora and Fauna, that's on the trade of wildlife species, regulating the trade all throughout the world. No? And translating the CBD and the CITES into a law, we have the Wildlife Act. So this is the RA 9147, and it is enforceable for all wildlife species found in all areas in the country. This is our legal framework now for the collection of wildlife from the natural habitat for various purposes, including for museums. Oops. Okay, so the law also has an implementing rules and regulations, and this is the joint DENR-PCSD Administrative Order Number 1, Series of 2004. And the DENR-PCSD, because there are three authorities that are in charge of overseeing the implementation of the Wildlife Act. The DNR, the Biodiversity Management Bureau for the DNR, the Bureau of Fisheries for the Department of Agriculture, and there's a separate governing body for Palawan, which is the Palawan Council for Sustainable Development. So the collections from the Cleopatras needed would have gone through the PCSD. So the IRR provides further details to the law, and the objectives of the objectives of the law in the IRR is to really it reflects the objectives of the Convention on Biological Diversity as well. But in addition to that, it of course looks at the protection of wildlife for the benefit for national interest. And then also, in addition to that, it initiates or supports scientific studies on the conservation of biological diversity. So researches are also covered by the law. So, what are the various species that are covered aside from all wildlife species? The law also provides that we come up with a list of endangered species or threatened species. So we have a listing of threatened species of fauna and also a listing of threatened species of flora. Why do we need the list? Because the penalties, the category of the species, if it's critical endangered or vulnerable, is the penalties are determined by the category. So the more endangered the species is, the higher the penalty. So you can go to jail for killing a Philippine eagle, for example, up to 12 years. And you may be fined up to 2 million pesos. So, For the DNR, we cover the terrestrial species, as I mentioned earlier. But there were certain gray areas before because the law says that for aquatic species, it's the DNR, but for marine species, it's the fisheries. So we had to come up with a list, and then there are certain species that are marine but are under our jurisdiction, like the marine turtles. So we needed to come up with a list just to make sure that there will be clear delineation of functions. But at this time, we are very fortunate that we have a very good working relationship with the Bureau of Fisheries. So it really doesn't matter anymore what species, because usually if you apprehend corals and marine turtles are together in one apprehension. So we don't want, like in the past, there were issues where the Bureau of Fisheries would leave the marine turtles behind because this was not under their jurisdiction. So that is no longer happening now. And also we needed to work out the frogs as well because well, it's under the DNR, because in the past there were questions whether the tadpoles would belong to the Bureau of Fisheries and then the mature frogs. Yeah. So the DA clearly all marine mammals, freshwater mammals, sea snakes, freshwater snakes, and all aquatic invertebrates. For all wildlife species found in the province of Palawan, the Palawan Council for Sustainable Development. So the bear cat, the Palawan forest turtle, Palawan hornbill. Okay, so what are the regulated activities under the Wildlife Act? Collection of wildlife for breeding and for research purposes, possession of wildlife, collection or possession of byproducts and derivatives. So even stool is covered by the Wildlife Act. Local transport of wildlife is also regulated. You have to go to the nearest central office, get a transport permit. Exportation or importation of wildlife, especially if it's a CITES species, then you go to our office to apply for a CITES permit. But if it's a non-CITES species, you go to the regional office, they will issue an import permit. Reintroduction or restocking of endemic or indigenous wildlife, bioprospecting, and introduction of exotic wildlife species. So invasive species are supposed to be regulated by this act. Supposed, because we can talk about the challenges later. Okay, it's very small, but this is just the list of activities that require permits under the 9147, and I already mentioned that earlier, no? So this is just a summary of what the previous slides. Okay. So if you want to collect wildlife for scientific research, we require the prior execution of the following. So we have to have an affidavit of undertaking by the applicant or a memorandum of agreement between the DENR and the proponent. So also, and then after we have that MOA, so usually it takes time, but we try to facilitate it at our level. In fact, there was a time when we were allowed to sign in behalf of the secretary, but at the moment it is now centralized with the secretary. But the gratuitous permit is issued by the secretary or the council. When I say council, this is PCSD. Okay. For foreign entity institutions affiliated or Filipino citizens affiliated with foreign institutions, execution of a MOA with the secretary. And before that MOA is executed, you have to submit a research proposal, a profile of your institutions, endorsement from the head of the institution, or in the case of an individual research, from a recognized expert or a research institution or a conservation organization. And then a letter of acceptance from the local collaborator. These are all safeguards that we adopt to make sure that we are all above board, that we are now not signing off resources for commercial purposes. Procurement of a GP or a gratuitous permit from the DMD director. So this is for researches that cover several areas. If it's just one area, then it's just from the regional office. What are the requirements for the GP? Of course, the memorandum of agreement. We have to have a MOA. Prior clearance from the Protected Area Management Board or the local government unit where the collection will be undertaken. And an FPIC if the area is within an ancestral domain. And actually, I think that's one of the challenges. And then payments of an amount of 100 pesos only for the application fee. For conservation or propagation activities and other wildlife conservation projects initiated by the local non-government or academic institutions, again, an affidavit of undertaking or a MOA to the concerned regional office. So it's the same requirements, but if it's just focused in an area, you just go to the nearest DNR office, and the issuance of a GP, if necessary, from the region as well, that it was permit. The requirement is the same, but then you don't have to go to the national level for the applications. So where to apply? The nearest DNR office and the Biodiversity Management Bureau if it covers several regions. For thesis students affiliated with local academic institutions, issuance of a GP, we require the research project proposal, endorsement letter from the concerned dean or head of office, prior clearance, again from the Protected Area Management Board, local government. So this is the prior informed consent and payment of the application fee. Exceptions, collection of specimen samples by government agencies necessary to address urgent concerns. So, for example, blood to test the monkeys for Ebola, it doesn't have to be covered by the permits that we mentioned. So, if it's medically related, it doesn't have to go through or for diagnostic purposes, it doesn't have to go through the application process, MOA and the GP. Okay. And other government-initiated or implemented research or scientific projects. Okay. The approving authorities at the moment for the MOA, it's the secretary, so involving a foreign entity. The approving authority would be at the secretary level, the local non-government organizations and academic institutions, which research will cover several regions, the regional director, various regional directors, or if there's only one area, then the one regional director. For the GP, scientific research on wildlife, we've approved, if there's already a MOA, the BMB will issue the GP. And if it's involving local non-government or academic institutions but covers several regions, it's the secretary who issues the GP. If it covers one region, it's the regional director. Okay. The thesis and dissertations that cover several regions, DMB can issue the permit, and for if it covers only one region, the regional director concerned. Okay. The deposition of legally sourced specimens, biological specimens shall be deposited through the National Museum or other DNR-designated depository institution. So the type specimens are usually deposited at the National Museum, and this is part of the conditions of the MOA. Provided that all holotypes are properly labeled and preserved. Okay. Specimens to be exported shall be deposited only at the laboratory or museum facilities identified in the GP. We also recognized in the past that there were certain specimens that could not be deposited to the National Museum because they didn't have enough facilities. So we would look for other partner institutions that can properly maintain the specimens. So in case there is a need to transfer any of the specimens to any other party, the permittee shall secure consent, express approval from the DNR prior to the transfer. So, yeah, I hope this is being done. Local transport. As I mentioned, you need to go to the Centro and you need to show that the documents were properly collected with appropriate permits, and they will issue you a transport permit ideally, and then they issue the local transport permit. So from Camiguin to Los Baños, you have to go to the Pedro of Camiguin for the local transport permit. And then for exportation, specimens to be exported require issuance of an export permit from the DNR regional office or the DNR-Biodiversity or BMB. If it's a CITES specimen, you have to go through the BMB will issue the CITES permit. If it's not a CITES specimen, just the regional director. And we have a list of those. No? And if in doubt, go to the DMB. So just to also explain those requirements, it's also to make sure that if the specimens are taken out of the country, we will be able to track them. Especially if they are used for commercial purposes, especially now, we have one of the intents really, we are now a party to the Nagoya Protocol. We want to make sure that if the genetic material is transformed into a viable commercial product, then we will be able to access the benefits from the commercialization. So that is the main. That's why we have all those regulations. So for the NIPAS, this is another law that governs the protected areas, and I'm very pleased that ACB, usually we don't want to map out where the resources are inside the protected areas, or if we have them, it is not for public consumption. Especially because there are still a lot of species that have not yet been described or not really been identified yet. And for all we know, this has, very important use for industrial or for medical purposes. So we are now consolidating all of these efforts together, and it's now more than ever that we want to work with the scientific institution, because we need to also complete the database and know that what genetic materials are. That's why we are into DNA barcoding, so that we know wherever these materials go, that we can identify that this came from somewhere in the Philippines. So anyway, for collections in protected areas, you only need to have the clearance from the Protected Area Management Board, and all the other requirements that I mentioned earlier will be part of the process. So I think this is the last slide. Yeah. So thank you very much.